Children of a different father. That Jesus had 4 brothers and at least 2 sisters is a given in Mark, our earliest gospel record. He names the brothers rather matter-of-factly: James, Joseph, Judas, and Simon. Mark mentions the sisters without naming them, but early Christian tradition says there were 2, a Mary and a Salome. Matthew, who followed Mark as his source, includes the same list. Luke, in contrast, drops the list of names entirely. He is an unabashed advocate of the Apostle Paul and inaugurates a long process of marginalizing the brothers of Jesus to the obscurity that we find them today. The later Christian dogma that Mary was a perpetual virgin, that she never had children other than Jesus, and never had sexual relations with any man, lies at the heart of the issue. No one in the early church even imagined such an idea, since the family of Jesus played such a visible and pivotal role in his life and that of his early followers. It all has to do with Mary being totally removed from her first-century Jewish culture and context in the interests of an emerging view of the time that human sexuality was degraded and unholy at worst, and a necessary evil to somehow be struggled against at best. The Apostle Paul, as we will see, built his theology around an essentially dualistic view of the cosmos, in which the earthly was denigrated in favor of the heavenly. He advocated celibacy as a higher spiritual way, though he did not absolutely forbid sex. According to Paul, marriage was an antidote for the spiritually weak who might be tempted towards sexual immorality. It is easy to see how these tendencies to equate the spiritual life with the non-sexual life were transferred to Mary and her family. Once you insist that the Blessed Virgin Mary was ever virgin, with no sexual experience whatsoever, then the brothers and sisters have to be explained away. I say this with no disrespect for those who hold such views of Mary, yet the teaching of the perpetual virginity is simply not found in the New Testament and is not part of the earliest Christian creeds. The first official mention of the idea does not come until 374 AD from the Christian theologian Epiphanius. Most of our early Christian writings before the later 4th century AD took for granted that the brothers and sisters of Jesus were the natural-born children of Joseph and Mary. By the late 4th century AD, the Church began to handle the problem of Mary's sexual life with 2 alternative explanations. One is that the brothers does not mean literally brothers born of the same mother, but is a general term referring to cousins. This became the standard explanation in the West, advocated by Roman Catholics. In the East, the Greek-speaking Christians favored a different view. The brothers were sons of Joseph, but by a previous marriage, and thus had no blood ties to Jesus or his mother. If we restore Mary's Jewish name Miriam or Maria, the most common Jewish female name of the day, and put her back into her first-century Jewish village of Nazareth, as a normally married Jewish woman, these theologically motivated concerns seem to vanish. We are free to recover a believable history much more fascinating and rich than any theological dogma. So who were the brothers and sisters of Jesus? The most obvious answer is they were children of Mary and Joseph, born subsequently in the marriage. Mary became pregnant while engaged, father unknown. Joseph married her anyway, adopted Jesus as his own, and the couple assumed a normal married life, producing 4 sons and 2 daughters. Such might well be the case, but there is a problem here that we must not overlook. There is good reason to suppose that Joseph died early. After the birth stories, he seems to disappear. Jesus is called son of Joseph, or referred to as the carpenter's son a few times, but Joseph himself never appears in any narratives, and nothing further is related about him. Jesus moved his mother and brothers to Capernaum at one point, no mention of Joseph. His mother and his brothers come seeking him in one story, again, no mention of Joseph. Even at the crucifixion of Jesus, Mary's mentioned, and possibly one of his sisters, but Joseph is again strangely absent. After Jesus' death, his followers were gathered in Jerusalem, and Mary, the mother of Jesus, with his brothers were part of the group, but no Joseph. If Joseph died early, and Jesus and his brothers and sisters grew up fatherless, this surely would have had an important psychological and sociological impact on the family. But if Joseph died childless, there are further consequences for traditional theological dogmas about Mary. According to the Torah or Law of Moses, the oldest surviving unmarried brother was obligated to marry his deceased brother's widow and bear a child in his name so that his dead brother's name or lineage would not perish. This is called a levirate marriage, or yibum in Hebrew. If Joseph was not Jesus' father, and Joseph died without children, was Mary the widow required to marry Joseph's brother? And do we know anything about Joseph's brother? Amazingly, we do, though seldom recognized, he is mentioned in the New Testament. We want to follow the evidence wherever it might lead, but the implications that Mary was the mother of 7 children through 3 different men does sound outrageous today. But what if such a practice was not only normal, but in fact also required and honorable within the Jewish culture of the time? Such was certainly the case. To honor a man who died without an heir, and thus assure his posterity, was one of the most sacred and holy things a family could do. Remember the 4 women Matthew mentions in his genealogy? 2 of the 4, Tamar and Ruth, were widows involved in levirate marriages. Perhaps Matthew knows more than he is explicitly telling us. It would be a mistake to judge any evidence concerning Mary and the fathers of her children by our theological and cultural standards. What we must do is look at the evidence, in this case a set of complex but revealing textual clues left unintentionally within the New Testament itself. The mystery of the other Mary. All 4 of our Gospels note that the women from Galilee who followed Jesus were present at his crucifixion and attended to his burial. Mark lists the names of 3 of these women: Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James the Younger and of Joseph, and Salome. Matthew, who used Mark as his source, has the same list with slight changes. Mary Magdalene was the well-known companion of Jesus. Salome, mentioned only by Mark, is very possibly Jesus' sister, or perhaps, according to Matthew, the mother of the 2 fishermen, James and John, who were part of the 12 apostles. In Luke's account, he drops the names and simply says that women were present, just as he did earlier with the names of the brothers of Jesus. Luke is not keen to emphasize the family of Jesus. Note that we have 2 women named Mary who are present. Later, about the burial of Jesus, Matthew tells us again that Mary Magdalene was there, as well as the other Mary. When the women returned to the tomb early Sunday morning to find it empty, again Matthew tells us they were Mary Magdalene and the other Mary. So the obvious question is this: just who is this mysterious other Mary? Mark identifies her specifically 2 more times, once at the burial as Mary the mother of Joseph, and then at the empty tomb as Mary the mother of James. He also notes again that Salome was present. So we know that this second Mary was the mother of a James and Joseph. But is there any way to identify her further? We do know another Mary who has 2 sons named James and Joseph, none other than Mary the mother of Jesus. Is this mysterious other Mary the mother of Jesus? And if so, why does Mark not openly identify her as such? Beyond this primary record of Mark, we do have one other independent account of these women, namely the Gospel of John. Notice carefully his list of the 3 women at the cross: Jesus' mother, Mary, his mother's sister, Mary the wife of Clophas, and Mary Magdalene. We still have 3 women, but Salome's dropped out, and all 3 are now named Mary. No matter how common the name Mary was at the time, surely 3 Marys should give us pause. Who is the new third Mary, the wife of Clophas? And who is Clophas? This Mary is identified as the sister of Mary, mother of Jesus. But what is the likelihood that two sisters in the same family would have the same name? Let's begin with Clophas, since we do know something about him. Clophas was the brother of Joseph, the husband of Mary. It is entirely possible that our mysterious Mary, wife of Clophas, mother of James and Joseph, was a sister-in-law of Mary, married to her husband Joseph's brother. That is the solution the Church has settled on over the centuries. But notice, if such were the case, what we have is more than a bit strange. Is it really likely that these two women, both named Mary, whether sisters or sisters-in-law, were married to brothers and had 3 sons with the same names and born in the same order, James, Joseph, and Simon? What seems more plausible is that Mark's Mary, mother of James and Joseph, was the same Mary as the mother of Jesus, and that the Gospel of John, or its later editors, has created a third Mary, wife of Clophas, who in fact was the same woman, in order to disguise the fact that Jesus' mother Mary, after the death of Joseph, married his brother Clophas. A decrypted version of John would read, "Standing by the cross of Jesus were his mother Mary, wife of Clophas, and Mary Magdalene." This would agree perfectly with Mark and not create the absurdity of sisters-in-law of the same name having identically named children. Our 3 women at the cross most likely were Mary Magdalene, Mary the widow of Joseph, who married Clophas, Joseph's brother, and Salome. There is one additional point about Clophas that supports this interpretation. His name comes from the Hebrew and means to change or to replace. So this is likely not his given name, but a type of nickname. He is the one who replaced his brother Joseph, who died childless. Clophas is mentioned only once in the entire New Testament in John 19:25. If he and his brother Joseph were much older than Mary, it is likely that neither was alive when Jesus was an adult. This is further indicated in the Gospel of John when Jesus, the eldest son in the family, just before his death, handed his mother over to the care of a mysterious beloved disciple that John prefers not to name. This person is most likely James, his brother, the next eldest in the family. But whoever it was, Jesus' giving his mother into the care of another indicates she was a widow. We have to remember that the Gospels are primarily theological accounts of the Jesus story, written a generation or more after his death. When it comes to Jesus' family, there is much they do not spell out, and there are things they appear to deliberately suppress. What we can say with some degree of certainty is the following. Joseph was not the father of Jesus, and Mary's pregnancy by an unnamed man was illegitimate by societal norms. Jesus had 4 half-brothers and 2 half-sisters, all children of Mary, but from a different father, whether Joseph or his brother Clophas. Jesus, by age 30, functions as head of the household. We now turn to Jesus' own life.